Hi everyone, this is For the Love of Comics, and in this episode we'll be celebrating Building Stories, the comics magnum opus by writer, artist and designer Chris Ware. We'll answer what is Building Stories, what is it about, and what makes it so special. Just like all of our What Is videos, all of which are part of this handy playlist linked above. I'll have to approach this work slightly differently than I do those other videos for reasons that I'm sure will soon become very clear. If you're interested in more or other Chris Ware comics, check out our The Comics of Chris Ware playlist, also linked above. And with all that out of the way, let's sink our teeth into Building Stories by Chris Ware. Building Stories is a comics novel published in 2012, written, drawn and designed by Chris Ware. It was published to almost universal acclaim, creating a bit of a sensation and raking in numerous awards at the end of the year. Much like Chris Ware's previous novel-length work, Jimmy Corrigan, Building Stories is actually a collection of serialized and independent pieces that took on a new identity as a complete single work. And even more so than Jimmy Corrigan, Building Stories broke through the comics graphic novels readership barrier by being named to numerous top 10 books of the year lists and top 10 fiction lists, alongside the expected best Comics of the Year awards that it also racked up. And in order to try and understand why, we'll need to take a slightly closer look at the book itself. And at first it seems a bit odd to call this a book. It's a large box resembling most of all a modern designer board game, maybe. You can see even the title is built up of individual letters or collections of letters being assembled together in like Scrabble tiles or game blocks. The back reinforces that board game idea a little bit, with all the contents and components laid out and with complete instructions on how to use it in the form of everything you need to read the graphic novel Building Stories. And as you open the box, you realize that it is indeed not a single book, but 14 distinct print products, ranging from a flip book to two-sided strips to large comics, hardcover volumes, posters, newspapers, magazine-sized comics, broadsheet-sized newspaper comics, and even a 4-panel backdrop board. Building Stories is built out of these 14 comic books, posters, pamphlets, and other paraphernalia, and is designed to be read in any order. These comics tell the story of a young woman who's never named, who lives on the 3rd floor of a 3-story brownstone building in Chicago. This woman wears a prosthetic limb, having lost a leg in a childhood accident, and is currently single. But these stories also include her childhood in suburban Illinois, as well as show her many years later after her brownstone days, when she is married and has a daughter. But also, some of these comics have to do with the old landlady of the Chicago brownstone who lives on the 1st floor. Others are about the incessantly arguing couple in the 2nd floor apartment of the same building. The building itself talks to us readers in cursive handwriting, and there's even comics about Branford, the best bee in the world, a bee who briefly gets trapped in an apartment window frame. The stories are presented in different formats, matched to their length, tone, narrative, and more, and each has differing layouts and color palettes. They also range from tiny panels crammed with speech to large spreads and diagrams, some of which are almost abstract. Put in the most basic terms, Building Stories is 14 different stories, and more invisible ones that connect them, that make, with the reader's involvement, one large story. So many things make this book special. There is the multiple books in a box concept, one that gives us fragments of different shapes and sizes, both literally and narratively. There's also the idea that these fragments are actually complete enough to be read in any order, allowing us, the readers, a small part in building the story. There is always Chris Ware's exact and clear art, which uses bold, primary and flat colors with engineering drawing-like precision to unify all of these different stories into a complete and new story. It could have been no more than a gimmick or a puzzle to solve, but instead it goes for more complex ideas about hierarchy, memory, and their effects on storytelling. Because all the pieces of the story are distinct and separate and can be read in any order, we not only get a completely unique experience, but also realize how that unique experience is just one of the many ways of knowing or remembering things, even the same things. So you'll see the protagonist as an adult and then read about them as a child and understand something more of them. At the same time, you'll unavoidably wonder what it would have been like if you had read the child section first and reconstruct that. In that way, you'll actually reread the stories in your head in a different order. And that density of reading and remembering actually happens effortlessly due to the elegance and balance of each piece. In many ways, this is a box of memories and of dreams that comes to us out of order, full of everyday details that become unique. Building Stories deals with a lot of Chris Ware's recurring themes like loneliness, loss, spaces and gaps instead of connections, but nevertheless, it is consistently joyful. Not because of the relative happiness or unhappiness of the characters, but joyful in its democratic approach to remembering life, read whatever you want. Joyful in its celebration of deep unspoken bonds, and joyful in the way that everything can be beautiful or breathtaking for the reader while still being neither good nor bad, just true for the characters. Even the simple title takes on punny aspects, from stories of this building to here you build a story to the grand what is a story and how is it built. I've heard Chris Ware called a hard to read or difficult to get author, and looking at the kind of thought and craft that goes into his work, I can try and guess why. Because it looks arty, because it looks complicated and therefore complex. But he is also a master of giving you multiple perspectives and angles in every sense, and he's so adept at polishing small human moments till they glow that I really think anyone who attempts this book has a strong chance of connecting with it emotionally, whether just by flipping through the pages, taking a closer look and eavesdropping on the characters, or just allowing the art and the color to wash over you and going wow. And that's where I think I'll stop today, even though I've barely scratched the surface of this masterpiece. Perhaps I'll come back and make more videos on it. For sure, I'd like to set up a close look at each of the 14 books within Building Stories, which I'll link to here in the future, so check back in. Or if you haven't already, subscribe and click on the bell icon below to be notified of new uploads. I hope you enjoyed our look at this modern masterpiece, and as always, we'd love your comments and questions below. This is For the Love of Comics, and thank you for watching.